He's hanging from the ceiling because he's a bat. That works, right? I'm gonna get toast today. Well, hello there, everybody. It is the end of October, Shocktober, and Halloween is upon us. By the time this video goes out, it might be over. We'll see. 12:30. It's gonna still be Halloween sometime. Got something really special as a house double feature. No, not the classic 80s house movies, because we're dealing with the Universal Classic Monster Complete Collection. And in 2021, we've been doing the Dracula Complete Legacy Collection. And today we're doing a double feature, the House of Frankenstein and the House of Dracula. Let's see here. House of Frankenstein, 1944. House of Dracula, 1945. House of Frankenstein. A deranged scientist revives the infamous Count Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, and the Wolfman. House of Dracula. Dracula and the Wolfman seek cures from a respected doctor who later discovers and tries to revive the body of Frankenstein's monster. So both of these advertise having 5 monsters. Frankenstein meets Wolfman was such a huge success that they went on to do more monster mashups. Can you believe it? With the House duo of movies. And they advertised having 5 monsters. I think it was 5 monsters, or 5 baddies anyway. And of course it was Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, the Mummy. Nope, not the Mummy. The Creature from the Black. No, hadn't gotten there yet. The Invisible Man. Nope, not him either. Phantom of the Opera. No, the other 2 were Mad Scientist, which I guess is kind of a Frankenstein trope, and the Hunchback, which is also a Frankenstein trope, unless you're talking about the Hunchback of Notre Dame, which they did list in the book. I remember reading that earlier. Not only are both the house movies on the Dracula disc, they're also on the Frankenstein discs and the Wolfman discs. So I think I'm just going to focus on the Dracula sections of the respected of both movies. They could be respected. I don't know. House of Frankenstein stars Boris Karloff, not as the monster, but as the Mad Doctor. Lon Chaney Jr. as the Wolfman, with John Carradine as Dracula. John Carradine jumping on the scene and doing his Dracula impersonation, his take on Dracula. John Carroll Nash, Anne Dwayne, Peter Cole, Elena Verdago, and Lyle Atwell. And he's like a lieutenant in this. He's a policeman. He's most famous, I believe it was Son of Frankenstein. Well, hello there. Son of Frankenstein, which that's where he gets spoofed in Young Frankenstein. But he appears as a policeman in both of the house movies, and it's almost like I don't think it's supposed to be the same town. I could be wrong about that. I mean, I watched them back to back, but Middle European town names kind of they all sound the same. I'm American. I couldn't remember from one to one, but to me it seemed like, and I'm not going to be able to remember a name, but the Pokemon, where every cop in every city looked exactly the same, and they were all the same name. I don't think they name him. I think they just call him Lieutenant. I could be wrong about that. All of you serious Universal Monster watchers out there, you tell me I'm wrong, which is fine because I'm just doing this. Okay, so House of Frankenstein starts off with Boris Karloff and a hunchback in jail. Boris Karloff is playing a mad scientist who's been jailed for trying to recreate the dead. Much like Frankenstein, he's obsessed with Frankenstein. Twist of fate. This movie is all about twists of fate happening to go outside the prison is a caravan of horrors, one advertising the actual corpse of Dracula. Lo and behold, lightning strikes the prison, collapses half of the wall. They're able to escape through it and end up helping the caravan, which gets stuck. And so they give them a ride because they're headed to someplace. And but Karloff, he's got his mind on revenge. So he says, "Hey, are you going to this town?" He's like, "Yeah, but not for a long time." He's all like, "Well, I think you're going right now." And he's all like, "No, I'm not." And he's like, "Okay." Daniel, I believe, is the hunchback's name. Go get him. And so Daniel kills him for him, and then they take over the caravan and head to whatever city that he wants to go because he wants to kill the Burgermeister who helped imprison him in the first place. He then goes to that town and opens up the curiosity shop display and has, basically shows Dracula in his coffin, which is a skeleton with this huge steak, nicely formed, nice and juicy steak, a really big, really, I think there's a picture on here in case I can't find it online. I'll just show it right there. It's like this huge steak. And if it's supposed to be the one that Van Helsing put in Dracula in the first movie, it doesn't match up because that was just a torn off plank of wood, if you remember. Burgermeister goes to the show, and there's this. I don't know. I kind of found it weird that there was this one. They had an American lady there who married the Burgermeister's grandson, and Lionel Atwell's there as the lieutenant, police chief, whatever, police lieutenant. And there's this weird play back and forth between the newlywed wife and the grandson and everybody else. And I don't know. It probably played really great in the 40s. Nowadays, it's just kind of like okay. Anyway, they go to the show. Karloff recognizes the Burgermeister. Burgermeister kind of recognizes him, but doesn't quite. And so the show ends. He removes the steak from Dracula's bones. And Dracula, you see the, I was going to say veins. It's probably the veins, the blood veins, and then, or the nervous system. But I'm going to assume it's the blood veins because it was over the rib cage. That seemed odd to me. I'm like, shouldn't some of that stuff be inside? But anyway, they do the muscles and then the skin forms, and then well, I mean, I say the skin forms, but he also has his clothes on. Karloff basically keeps the stake there and said, "Hey, I brought you back to life. I can put you back to being in that limbo that you were in before. You have to do my bidding." And he's like, "If you do that, I will make sure that your coffin is nice and safe. You'll always have your home dirt inside it, and it'll be protected." And he's like, "For that, I would do anything." So he makes a pact to go kill for Dracula to go kill the Burgermeister. And he meets up with the Burgermeister and they invite him over to get to drink wine at his house. So he does that. They go and they drink wine. And then pretty soon afterwards, like before you know it, Dracula's hitting on the only woman we've seen so far in the movie and convinces her to put on his ring and, he's going to mesmerize her, make her his bride. Who he's been just bones for so long, It's kind of like getting out of prison, I guess. He manages to mesmerize the girl, and then he kills the Burgermeister by turning into a bat and then going and sucking his blood, and it's all done in shadows. A shadow of the bat landing on the Burgermeister and draining his blood. And it's kind of reminding me of Son of Dracula, and it kind of makes me wonder if they had some kind of code where you couldn't part some part of the ratings code at the time where you couldn't show somebody necking. It really kind of seems like that maybe that was the case. Because why is he changing it into a bat to bite people and drain their blood? Doesn't make any sense. He also has a dashing top hat the whole time. So I was kind of hoping that when he turns into a bat and flies away, there'd be a little top hat on top of the bat's head. Because that wouldn't be silly at all. But I mean, his whole clothes conform when he becomes a bat, and they formed from bones to human. So really, his outfit is just an outer illusion of himself. So is his clothes his skin? Is his clothes just an optical illusion? Is he really walking around naked? And but we think he's fully dressed because it looks like that way. I don't know. Uh, but you can have a top hat, not have a top hat, bat, top hat. No worries. He tries to steal the girl, but husband finds him and finds the dead Burgermeister and is chasing after him. And the lieutenant happens to be nearby, and so they chase down Dracula and the carriage. Everything's also horse-drawn carriage and candles, right? So it's this weird thing where like, does this actually take place before Son of Dracula, which was supposed to have been, to my understanding, a modern movie? Or is this what they think 1940s Europe was? Or were they like, well, we can't really show that section of Europe right now because there's a war going on, or there was a war going on, depending on, when it was made. So they said it in the past. It's interesting. I mean, but you kind of have to, it always felt like there's supposed to be like continuation on from this one to the next one to the next one to the next one. So it definitely happens in the 40s because Wolfman happened in 1941, I'm pretty sure. And then Frankenstein meets the Wolfman was the next one. And this one basically takes up after that. House of Frankenstein is a direct sequel to Frankenstein meets Wolfman because later on when they show up, they're exactly how they were at the end of the last movie. So the Dracula continuity is a little wavy. But anyway, so Dracula's being chased. Karloff and his buddy are leaving the area, and they die. No, and they're like, "Oh, hey, Dracula's being chased." And Karloff's like, "Well, there's only one thing we can do then." So the hunchback goes back and he throws the coffin into the ground. Nice early stunt work here. Going up on top of the carriage, running across the carriages as it's being pulled by horses. He throws the coffin out of the back, and that causes another twist of fate. This movie, it's a twist of fate, causes the hitch to the horses to magically pull up and fall off. So Drax's carriage goes off the edge and down a hill, and he's like jumping off of it, all Action Man style. The girl is fine, I believe. I mean, they take her away and she's unconscious. I don't think. I can't remember what happens to her. And Dracula goes up to his coffin, and then the sun comes up, and of course he dies. You see his hand over the coffin, right? And he's got this gloved hand and shirt. And then, of course, that all fades away to bones, helping the theory that his clothing is just an illusion and an extension of his psyche or body or whatever. And then his ring that was on the girl's hand, falls off. And that's the end of Dracula's section of House of Frankenstein. And then we go off to the Frankenstein town. to meet up with the last movie, and I'll talk about that in the when I cover that next year as part of the Frankenstein Legacy Collection. Okay, moving on to House of Dracula. Now this one's interesting. It's actually it's directed by the same guy, and let's see the writing. Yeah, Eric C. Clinton. Yeah, Edward T. Lowell. Screenplay by Edward T. Lowell. I think they designed these as to be like a one or two punch, right? Or maybe they're just like House of Frankenstein does do well. Let's do House of Dracula now. 1 year apart. There wasn't a whole lot of thought to it. But then they really didn't care about the continuity because Dracula shows up to a respected doctor's house and is like, I want to be cured of vampirism, which is quite uncharacteristic for Dracula. And he just shows up in full costume and he's got his coffin. There's no explanation on how he comes back from the grave. Nothing. They're like, no one cares. Just have Dracula and it's fine. And he shows up and he's like, I want to be cured of vampirism. He's like, well, okay, we're going to do blood transfusions. And so the doctor actually transfuses his blood with Dracula, puts his blood into Dracula. Dracula has learned about this doctor through his nurse who was working there. And he's all like, oh, it's so good to see you again. And then later he's like, tries to hypnotize the nurse. She can come under his spell so he can make her his make her, yeah, that's what I said. Make her his bride. And that makes me think that maybe that was his sole intention, that he wasn't horribly interested in getting a blood transfusion at the time. That he wasn't really looking for a cure, he was looking for an excuse to go to this house or it's a house, but it's also supposed to where he also does experiments and he's happy to have patients live in the house with him. And it's on this huge cliff side with the ocean winds crashing up against it. And the town starts with a V, and I don't remember if it's the final town that the other doctor that Karloff was in or not. Maybe we'll find that out next year. So while this is going on, Lawrence Talbot shows up, and he also wants to be cured of his of being a werewolf because he always wants to be cured of being a werewolf. He doesn't like being a werewolf. And of course, the blonde has feelings for him. There's 5 monsters in this again: Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, the Wolfman, the Mad Doctor, which is a spoiler warning because the respected doctor ends up turning into a mad doctor, and then they bring back the Hunchback. But this time, it's a female. They twisted it. They gender bended it or whatever they call that, and it works. I think it works for this movie. She's one of the best characters emotionally in the whole thing. Luckily, she doesn't die. Spoiler? Wait, or does she? Oh my gosh, my memory. Is it there? I don't know. No, I think she lives. I think I would remember if she. Oh no, everything goes to heck at the end. Anyway, those are the 5 monsters at this time. Dracula is putting the moves on the nurse. He's been told that he should only show up at the house certain days, certain times. He's like, the only way I'm going to do this, cure you, is if you follow these rules. Otherwise, it's just kind of too dangerous. I mean, he doesn't tell Dracula he's too dangerous. He's not like, he's like, but I'm only helping you if and Dracula agrees to it. But of course, Dracula breaks that. He does his little bad act and lands out the window. And I think this is the only time, I'm going to say this and it might change later. I think this is the only time you actually see the wires on the bat, or they're just horribly obvious. So there's that. That happens. I am admitting that you can see the wires on the bat. The bat looks incredibly fake. I am not going to try and say this movie is awesomely perfect with no imperfections, but I'm still giving it 2 thumbs up, baby. Dracula gets caught trying to get the nurse. So the doctor's like, oh no, you get away from the nurse. We're going to go ahead and do another blood transfusion, even though it's not time. The hunchback nurse is like, oh no, this is dangerous. Let's not do this. And he's like, no, we'll do it. We'll be fine. They go down there and they do the blood transfusion thing. And Dracula does his whammy eyes. I don't have any spotlights on my eyes. So Was it David? I can't remember if it's David. John Carradine's performance. Uh, so far, he's the second best Dracula. Sorry, Lon Chaney Jr. But there's still, when he does his mesmerizing eyes, reminiscent of the Spanish language. I don't have that information. The Spanish language Dracula. Just a hint in there. Puts the whammy on the nurse. She falls down faint. He then moves the syringe so that he's not getting the doctor's blood, but the doctor is getting his blood. And then he's gonna go get the nurse, but the sun is coming up, so he has to go, and he goes into his coffin. The doctor wakes up. He wakes up the nurse and says, "What happened?" It's like, "Oh, I don't know. I'm sorry." And he's like, "Oh, I've had enough of this Dracula's shenanigans. He's broken the pact. I'm gonna go take care of him." So he goes down into the cellar where Dracula, where Dracula's hidden. He gets him, pushes him over to the window, opens up the coffin, and the sunlight comes down on him, and we see him first his skin and clothes dissolve, so it's muscle, and then they dissolve, so it's the the veins and arteries, and then they dissolve into it's just his bones again. And it's cured, everything's fine, except poor doctor is now infected with Dracula's blood. So Dracula does make some more cameos in a dream sequence where the doctor slowly goes mad. Dracula's piercing eyes are involved with the swirling. But that's Dracula's involvement in the House of Dracula. So we've had 4 Dracula movies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we'll say 5 Dracula movies, not including the Spanish language one, because it's exactly like the first one. And in those movies, we only see Dracula's house twice in the first 2. So in House of Dracula, we see no house. So I don't know what that means. If you were thinking House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula were about flipping old mansions to be hip and cool and trendy, to modernize them so they can sell real quick. Nope, that's not the case. It's more about the legacy of the monsters and just bringing them all together and having a great time. Would it have been nice if they could have fit the mummy in or the Invisible Man? Yes. It was before the creature, so that he couldn't have been in it. If you want a movie that's like that, then I guess I would recommend Monster Squad, even though it's a heavily 80s movie. Some of the bullying and terminology in the movie might bother modern audiences. But that's a different Halloween movie. And we've got Abbott Costello Meet Frankenstein, which I will talk about briefly, but that pretty much wraps it up for this Shocktober Halloween season. The Dracula Complete Legacy Collection is over. That is it for the Dracula Complete Legacy Collection. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for joining me, and we will see you next Shocktober for the Frankenstein Complete Legacy Collection. You guys take care. Happy Halloween, and have a great year. Wait, don't. I want you to have a great year, but don't just show up for the Halloween stuff. Watch the other videos too. Come on, man. Do the likes and the subscribes and all that kind of jazz. Algorithms go up, up, up. Why not? Or just enjoy the video.